Derek Hanley's new book is called Photos from the Frontlines, a year on the streets of Alameda County. Derek is a photographer. He's a military veteran. He is a paramedic, and so this is a perfect project for him, and we're happy to have him online with us right now. You wanted to embed yourself with paramedics and really sort of tell their story. This was before COVID, though. You just wanted to sort of document what life is like for paramedics, right?
Yeah, correct. I was going out with the crews, getting to know what it was like to be a paramedic in the Bay Area in California, because I've worked as a medic in Texas and in New York, but never in that service area. And each place where, EMS services is kind of unique. So I was going out, getting shots of the crews just to give to them so they could show their friends and family what they do, because not many people know, what goes on inside the back of an ambulance and stuff. So started off innocently enough, and then bam, like you said, March 16th, 2020, COVID hit, Bay Area was locked down, and the whole project took on a completely different tenor.
I bet it did. When you do something like this, when you embed yourself with a group like this, how do you stay out of the way? That would be my concern is, look, I don't want to get in your way. I don't want to, interrupt what you're doing, but I do want to document what you're doing. How do you go about doing that?
Yeah, it's a dance almost, Paul. It's a choreography. And the fact that I'm a paramedic, I think, helped to drop their guard when I was around and allowed me to get some of the more intimate shots you see in photos from the front lines. But I also understand the steps that go into taking care of a critical patient. So I was able to be, close enough that I could document what was happening, but far enough out of the way that I wasn't interrupting patient care. It's a delicate balance, but since I have experience in the field, I think that helped me capture these moments so much better.
How did things change, and when did you notice that things were starting to change when the pandemic started?
Yeah, I think, the biggest shift that really struck me was, we were hearing stuff in the news. There's a lot of uncertainty going around, and people were kind of unsure whether to wear masks or not. But, once the pandemic really started to flare up, one of the things that struck me was the lack of personal protective equipment. The demand for PPE was far outstripping the supply chain. It couldn't keep up. And so, what was crazy was when things were really getting bad, medics were being issued one N95 mask at the beginning of their 12-hour shift and would have to exchange it on a one-for-one basis with a captain or a supervisor at the hospital, after each patient that they had to use it. So, it's one thing to go into battle with your helmet and your body armor. It's another thing to have to stand on your hind legs and fight, with just your polyester shirt. And that's what these medics had to do for so long, and improvise PPE and stuff like that. And, their bravery and their courageousness and their resilience, I can't trumpet it enough.
Were they going on a lot of COVID-related calls? Were they going into the homes of people who were in such dire condition that they needed EMS?
Absolutely. Paul, this thing can be spread asymptomatically. So really any patient you show up or any home you walk into could potentially, be deadly for you and your family. And there's a striking instance in photos from the front lines where I'm sure you remember early in the pandemic, the virus was just burning through nursing homes. And that was one of the chief, sources of transmission. A lot of the nursing homes in the Bay Area were so struck by this virus that every single staff member who was working there became sick. Every single patient in the place was sick, and the county asked the EMS agency if the paramedics could come and staff these nursing homes to take care of these folks. And man, Paul, these guys and gals had already been, fighting this and trying to keep everyone safe for months and months. And these folks raised their hand to volunteer to walk in to take care of an entire building full of COVID positive patients after they've already been on the front lines for months and months. And man, if you have a better example of service before self, I'd love to hear it.
You were embedded with this group. You were taking photos of the work that they were doing. Were you concerned for your own safety? Were you worried about, or did you get COVID during this period?
Yeah, when COVID struck, I could have easily just washed my hands of the whole project and worked from home and kept myself 100% safe as I could anyway. But, I made the conscious choice, Paul, to go back out there and document these stories, because otherwise these never would have been told. Fortunately, I was able to, I've been a medic for a long time. I know how to wear the PPE and things like that. So I was able to keep myself safe throughout the whole thing. And there was a concern for getting sick and stuff. But I'll be honest, Paul, I wasn't as concerned about myself getting sick. I was more worried about spreading this thing to my wife or, those who were closest to me. That's what really scared me. And I think that's what was unique about this battlefront is, these folks on the front lines were not only risking their own life, but then had the added burden of having to be worried about, getting their friends and loved ones sick. So, on top of the routine, if we can put air quotes around routine trauma that paramedics have to face, the car accidents, the cardiac arrest, injured children, things like that. Now we have this ever ballooning weight and uncertainty that these folks have to face. And, the courageousness of these medics who are out there just can't be overstated.
Which photographs do you think best illustrate what that time period was like? Do you have one that stands out in your mind?
I think the cover image on Photos from the Front Lines is one of the ones that kind of sums up the chaos and, just the strange things that were happening. The photo is of, it's in the ambulance bay, which is usually open, but there's one side of the photo is dominated by these outbreak tents that hospitals were setting up because they were, expecting this big surge of patients to be coming in. And if someone's sick, you don't want to bring them necessarily into the emergency room because that can then spread amongst the other, trauma patients and sick folks who are there. So you see these outbreak tents, you see nurses who are in, these almost like space-looking helmets and masks, and I'm fully gowned, and it kind of, to me, emblemizes what was so unique and so challenging about this time for the folks who are out there on the front lines every day.
Really incredible. Hey, COVID is still with us. I mean, it's not over. The pandemic is still around. Obviously, the strains are less severe now. There is vaccine available. But, I mean, these frontline workers are still dealing with this every day, aren't they?
100%. And, the book focuses on paramedics, but there is also, the healthcare workers in the hospitals and things like that. Anytime you're dealing with patients, you have the potential for this virus. And, we're seeing in EMS and in the hospitals staffing shortages because people are getting burnt out trying to deal with this stuff. And, I can tell you firsthand, having to wear, N95 and all this protective gear for 12 hours straight every day, it starts to wear on you. And one of the other things, Paul, is that, early in the pandemic, there was this huge outpouring of support for medics and for hospital workers and things like that. But that has since waned. And it's hard to maintain that level of readiness to, sacrifice so much of yourself and give when society doesn't seem to care or want to honor your sacrifice. And so I think that's why we're seeing a lot of turnover and burnout in the healthcare industry because they've been dealing with heightened level of situational awareness for years now. And human beings aren't designed to withstand that level of sustained stress for so long. So that's one of the things I'm hoping with this book is to kind of raise awareness of what these folks do so that society can honor them and take care of these folks like we do for those who sacrifice so much in the military.
Absolutely. We need to remember what's going on the front lines. And you document this so nicely in Photos from the Front Lines, a year on the streets of Alameda County. Do you have a website or social media or anything where people can connect? Obviously, they can buy the book, where they buy books, but is there any other online component?
Absolutely. Folks can go to my website, dohp.net, that's DOHP.net. You can find the book on Amazon, and I'm on Instagram at That's Dope, DOHP.
All right, very good. Hey, Derek, great talking to you. I appreciate your time this morning. Thanks so much.
Great speaking with you, Paul. Thank you so much, and have a good day.
All right, you too. Bye-bye.